Okay, so let's start with introductions. Because we have more time because we're doing a discussion today, I want to spend a little bit more time on introduction. So I'd really love to hear about how you were introduced to data as a concept for kind of a career in your life. You know, what changed your idea of data from just a thing that exists to something you can do. So hi everyone, my name is Amanda Darkangela. I'm a co-organizer for Syracuse WIML DS. I am also a senior consultant with CTI Data, which is a boutique data consultancy. I also do a number of other things around data and advocacy, including I'm on the Ithaca Cybersecurity Certificate Program Advisory Board, which allows me to give some impact on how people are educated around data and cybersecurity. I was introduced to data at a very young age. I have my dad has degrees in structural, civil, environmental, and some other engineering degrees. So he is not only this really big driving force in my life, but also highly analytical. And when I was young, I used to get sick a lot and just like minor illnesses and stuff. And so he had me start to track what I would do on a daily basis and how I was feeling. And it was very basic, but it was in an Excel spreadsheet. He helped me make some graphs with it. I was probably 7 or 8 and made these cutesy little graphs with colors that I thought were cute. Um, and so that's really where my concept of data as a productive opportunity came from. And then I went to college and other things happened. But that is really what sticks out in my mind as how data really ingrained itself in my life. Remember that here at WIML DS, um, we play tag. And so I will call on someone. Sihan, we are super happy to have you. Yes, the name of the group is Women in Machine Learning and Data Science, but we are open to everyone. And we're very glad that you could join us today. Sihan, why don't you give your introduction? And please tell us how you were introduced to data.
Let me open my camera. Hello, good evening. Thanks so much for having me. I think this is kind of my first socialization in a data group. I mean, I have done my PhD, like data has been everywhere for me. But as a concept, I think as you mean here, like as it will apply in data analytics, like as a more technical term, not like part of my natural life, I can say. It has not been part of my life for so long. Like data is everywhere, of course, like we are expected to analyze data, but the way it is introduced in my field, at least in math education, has not been the same. Like we don't talk about it that much in this technical sense. So what can I say? I think it has been almost 10 years that data has been in my life, because I have done my master's like kind of this started 10 years ago, and then came to the PhD in the US. But in this technical sense, data has been part of my life in the last few years, when I noticed that there is this thing which I am already excited about and I don't know. And this thing, like data and everything that surrounds it, includes like some software that requires coding, and you can do some interesting stuff like visualizations, analysis, which are beyond, I mean, what I used to do in Microsoft Excel. I mean, you can do interesting stuff in Microsoft Excel too, but in my regular life, in the research that I used to do, it was very limited, I can say. And the way that I was supposed to use was very limited. And I mean, not being aware of like aware of this technicality or philosophy, I wasn't, I think, enjoying the data analysis work that I was doing. Because I mean, I think it is that simple. Like, there is pleasure you will get from it, and then you don't know that like pleasure is part of it, I can say. I mean, you work hard, but it looks like it is just part of the work. I mean, you just do it because it's work. But I mean, I don't know if this was relevant.
Yeah, no, that was extremely relevant. Actually, could you just give your name and the organization that you associate with?
I am Cihan. I am from Turkey, and I am currently associated with Florida State University. I am an adjunct there, currently teaching like a curriculum course. In the summer, I taught doctoral level statistics are staff course for doctoral students who had no experience in R and some experience in R, like this diverse group. And now recently I started again a postdoc at FSU where they are writing curricular materials for students, like to teach middle school math along with coding, computer science ideas.
Very cool. So when I say that we play tag here at Level DS, what that means is after you're done with your introduction, you call on someone else in the group. So call
Oh,
on
I
someone
see.
else in the
I can call Kylie maybe.
Hi, my name is Kyle Gilbert. I'm a recent Careers in Code graduate, the coding bootcamp here in Syracuse, and I don't currently have an organization. I'm looking for work, but in terms of what interests me about data, my background is in linguistics, so I guess that was my introduction to data a little bit. But in a lot of ways, this class is my formal introduction to data. And I'm interested also in obviously in programming and in natural language processing, which is part of my interest in data as well. So.
Just one thought. It is nice to hear this because I just want to. I was just starting to learn NLP. I mean, as being like a more of a qualitative researcher, because we did mostly qualitative research, but it is by hand manual. I mean, manual coding, manually trying to understand textual data. So it's nice to see that there is someone here, particularly from linguistics, I can say.
Thanks. Oh, and I'm supposed to call on somebody, Madison.
Oh, I saw from the chat that Madison had some Wi-Fi issues, so if...
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, you could go Ashley then, I guess.
Oh, okay. I'm Ashley Jingleski. I'm a data analyst for a utility services company in Syracuse. But I kind of got my introduction to being more interested in the data analytics side from a science background. I went to school for environmental science, but a lot of what I was doing was like field work where you would go and collect all this cool like plant data and things like that, and kind of get to like manipulate it and things like that. But for some of the roles I was in, I wasn't really getting to get into the nitty gritty analytics of it. So kind of shifting to doing more with coding kind of helped me understand a little better like what was going on the back end of all these people going out and collecting data. Call on Jessica next.
Hey, so my name is Jessica. As far as my background with data, I wouldn't say have an amazing story like you all, like Amanda or Kyle or any of your stories. Mostly, I went to school for business, and when you do business, you take some quant classes and statistics classes. So my introduction is pretty formal and academic in the sense of building models or looking at what's happening in the business and trying to make some determine what the best course is for that. As far as like my interest now is just trying to understand where the market's going. So in my day-to-day work, I've seen that a lot of more companies are shifting to trying to understand their data and capitalize on that data and build their business, and just trying to understand where the market's going, right? Like learn about that and see where it's going, and see what I can do and skills I can pick up to kind of help and bring it to my day-to-day job.
That's awesome. I secretly love finance and alternative finance data that is quantitative. It is a guilty pleasure of mine because I know that finance is bad and we should not like finance, but I love getting into business analytics. So yeah, fantastic story. I know you said you didn't like it, but it's great. Anyways, so today is a discussion session. It is open to whatever you want to talk about. I have some topics that some prompting questions if you want me to pull those up, but I'm going to start by opening the floor to anyone. Questions for myself or Ashley, questions for other group members, just kind of things you want to chat about if you have anything on your mind.
I have a quick question. So I heard a little earlier this week, someone was, an email came across my computer, and it was talking about a unified data model, like learning how to build those out. And I did some research on it, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on it. Like all of the research basically said it was like an amazing thing and it was the way of the future. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it and see what you think about it.
Yeah, did you hear about it in the context of healthcare or general unified data model?
Just general. It
Okay.
was the context was, it was more about they were trying to get people, there was a tool available and they were trying to get folks trained in the tool as well as make folks aware of the tool's existence.
Yeah, so do you know what the name of the tool was?
No, I don't recall
Okay.
it.
That's fine. So the interesting thing that I find about a unified data model, at least in the context that I've seen it, is essentially taking a fully flat data sector, essentially. So all of the data from any given organization and structuring it in a way that is effectively standardized based on the industry, which I find really interesting because I am a big proponent for standardization. So I think in terms of the ease, effective and efficient, I think these are extremely strong capabilities. I do wonder if in certain industries or for certain organizations, you're essentially trying to fit a square peg into a round hole for the sake of standardization. But I think overall, it's moving towards a really interesting, effective capability. My other concern about it is if this standardization is built on the backs of multinational conglomerates, I worry about the bias that they're bringing towards a unified data model if they're building these architectural structures in ways that benefit performant capitalism, as opposed to ways that truly serve the organizations that they need. I think that's something that will play out if and when we have the opportunity to have a standout nonprofit organization for standardization within the data industry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. I don't know. What do other people think? Have other people heard of unified data theory and unified data models? What were some of your other thoughts about it, Jessica?
So when it initially came across my computer and I did a quick search on it, it didn't mention industry specific like you mentioned. It was kind of toting the benefits of it coming like consolidating all the data from these sources and then making it sort of like a connected spider web, if you will, that could move data efficiently and effectively throughout an organization to a target source. And it seemed like that was the main benefit, but I didn't. I need to do more research on it. Again, this was just a quick search and some quick Googling, but it seems like you're saying that model is placed in an industry context, even more in an organization context, and then used by the organization, but it might not necessarily benefit the industry as a whole.
I think it could absolutely benefit the industry as a whole. So for those that don't know what a unified data model is an organization, so a company providing a service to a standardized service to centralize and create a data hub for another organization. So Syracuse University wants to centralize all of their data inputs. So they built a data hub. And so they go to a vendor that offers educational data centralization services. And that vendor might have a product that they sell that is a standardized version that they sell to all university style organizations. So I think it could be really good for an industry. I think where we run into issues is if there are outlier organizations within a given industry that don't necessarily fit into that strict model that they've built, if there's still an opportunity for them to build a customized data hub that is not necessarily exactly what the vendor thinks that organization should look like.
Gotcha. So are you saying that they can't be customized at all once they're built? Like, you know how you have products like, let's say, Informatica or Dell Boomi, any product, right? That they can be customized to the client, right? They come with a set number of features, but they can be customized. Is that not?
So there's both. There are some products that can be can't be customized. The majority of them can to a certain extent. You know, it means that you're paying consultant hours. It means that you're going through 6 to 8 months of change management and understanding how to really develop that in the way that customizes to that organization, which I am always a proponent for. I think the truly customized data solutions are the ones that end up long-term scalably best serving the organization that's using them. So they can be customized. It's called Out of the Box Plus, which means that it's a mostly out of the box solution. So theoretically, if your organization fits that standardization, you could use it out of the box. But the plus means that you get, say the application that you're buying, the product that you're buying of the centralized data hub is $100,000. Then Out of the Box Plus might be $150,000, and you get a bucket of $50,000 worth of consultancy hours where they're building out your custom service for that product.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Anyone have any other thoughts on unified data models? Cool. what else does everyone have? Questions or thoughts, or we can go into my pre-built questions if you'd like. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen quickly. So just as a quick review, over the last few weeks, we've been focusing on the areas of data. So we went through architecture, modeling, storage and operations, security, documentation and content. Documentation saves lives. Someone put it on a t-shirt. Data warehousing and business intelligence, integration management, data quality, and references and metadata. So with that in mind, I know that we talked about this a little bit last time, but I'd like to hear, now that you've had time to like marinate on it, which of those areas of data science do you relate most to? Which do you find most appealing? Which kind of sparked your interest?
I can go first. So mine is the same as kind of when I first joined. It's just learning about the overall architecture and how all the pieces fit together and how you kind of go from, I think I mentioned it earlier in the earlier sessions, right, to source to target, right, and figuring out what tools to use and how everything kind of fits together. I'm still trying to understand the big picture.
Yeah, very cool. Architecture is, I mean, it's one of the key aspects of data as we move into what I look at as almost a new era of data, where we're thinking about it much more strategically as opposed to tactically. You know, we're not just saying, I need analysis on this thing now. We're thinking, in 5 years, I might be interested in knowing about XYZ analysis and being able to do XYZ predictive modeling. So having that underlying architecture that really supports the capabilities of scalable analysis is so key to what's going to happen in 5, 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I recall you mentioning that you were also, that was something that you were interested in as well. How do you, or how would you recommend that us that are still learning, that we learn about all of the different tools, right? We can Google them, but would you suggest we go in and like see if there are free trials where we can play with it? Like, because there are so many tools out in the market, right, related to data, right? So how would you suggest we go about learning them so that if we do want to understand the big picture, we can take the first steps?
Definitely play with them. You know, there are a couple big player tools, Azure, Snowflake, AWS. Those are really like tier one. In tier two, you have places like BIME and Zendesk and Sisense and some other, you know, front to back and solutions that are maybe not as popular. But go and play with them. I personally keep an Azure database to do random stuff around the house. Like I have a table in my Azure database that is solely, it's a contacts table, but it is a contacts table that I built solely so I could send out Christmas cards to my friends. So if you have uses for stuff like that, you know, you get free trials on everything. And if you find one that you like, having a hosted cloud is not expensive, especially if you're not using it. You may spend 5 cents a month on an empty database. So go and play with them. Microsoft, Snowflake, to a certain extent, Amazon have really good tutorials. So go and watch the tutorials. They don't just get into like what their products do. They actually get into the theory of data architecture and engineering. So definitely go and do those. Signing up for the educational aspects is always free. So definitely get into the communities for all of those. And if you're really interested, look at getting certified. There are base level certifications. You can do more advanced certifications for all of those products. So think about potentially doing that. It looks great on your resume, and it really tells you how your skills are. I recently got certified in data engineer for Azure, and it was harder than I expected it to be. So they really are expecting a lot from you as a developer in the community. So having that is a really good boon on for any employer.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Does anyone else want to talk about what they think about data science areas?
I kind of talked about this.
Oh, sorry, you go, Kyle.
Well, it's okay. I'm just, I'm kind of repeating what I said last time. We kind of discussed this a little last time, that I was intrigued by data cleaning. And then I guess the other thing, I don't know if it's so much an interest, but just something I'd like to get better at, is just designing databases. What little I've done of it, I found to be challenging, or at least in the sense that like I'd set things up one way and then I get halfway through building the project and I'd have to like change things around. And I feel like that's probably something that with practice you get better at. So yeah, I don't know. Or maybe just looking at more databases. I don't know. Does anybody have any suggestions about how to get better at that?
Yeah, I would say look at schemas that people have built. If some places publish their style guides, and so their style guide will be like, this certain type of information is always a table. When we do this, we build a view. When we build our tables, the naming convention is this. When we build our views, the naming convention is that. Within our like table structure, dimension tables are labeled like this, and fact tables are labeled like that. So it's very like detailed minutia that can be frustrating to go through at certain times, but especially if you really want to get into it, find a database or build your own database and then force yourself to write a style guide for it, and then force yourself to write other documentation for it, because ultimately what you're trying to do with documentation is teach others what you've already done. So you have to make sure that someone else can understand what's happening there. And as you try to explain it to others, you find that any errors that you've made in the past, and you can say, well, I didn't really want it to be a snowflake schema. I wanted it to be a star schema. I messed up here. Let me go back and fix that.
That's a good idea. Thanks.
Yeah. How does everyone else feel about documentation? Is it the bane of their existence? No. Yes. Usually people hate it.
I mean, the databases I've made are so small compared to what you're talking about. So they're just for my own use in small projects. But, even then, things that I forgot to include or things that I needed to move from one table into another because it made more sense that way once I started actually using it. Like, I'm just a beginner basically. But so try not to be too hard on myself, but it's something that I'd like to work on. So
you are a beginner. You are not just a beginner.
right. Thank you.
Everyone has to start somewhere, and especially in data, it's difficult to find a place to start. We all come from very weird beginnings when you join data, especially I think around this era is when we're starting to see more prevalence of true data programs like in college and stuff. And so we're seeing people come into data in a much more traditional way. But similarly to the arc of computer sciences in the 70s, we are coming into our own in very strange and disparate ways. So everyone's got to start somewhere. Okay, so I guess another thing that I wanted to kind of prompt you guys on is about like the data types. So Ihan, can you tell me how to pronounce your name again?
Jihan.
Jihan?
Yeah. Maybe
Great.
I should write like in a pronounceable way. Can I? change
No,
my
I
name?
think it's good for people to hear you say it out loud, and then we should, be respectful and remember it.
No, you don't need to. I mean, it's not. I mean, I'm from Turkey. Turkish is kind of a weird language in the use of C, the word C. I mean, in Latin languages, like using these letters, it is C or K sometimes. But
Yeah.
when Turkey adopted Latin letters, this came as J. We
Oh,
actually
cool.
have the letter J, but we also have this one too, and it's weird. And my American friends, when I first came here, they used to write my name like with J, like Jehan, which certainly helps with the pronunciation, which I totally agree. I mean, it makes sense.
So you had mentioned earlier there is this kind of there's this barrier to people coming into quantitative sciences because the thought is that the data is quantitative always and never qualitative. But I guess, how does everyone feel about how data types, both qualitative and quantitative and categorical in that kind of weird gray space, Booleans, how do you feel like those impact the types of data that you're collecting?
In my experience, first of all, when we first began the project, and the project is like we collected data, it was an NSF funded project, and then we collected data from university students, from lots of universities, in undergrad math context. Mostly, I mean, we did surveys too, interviews at some point, but having no experience in data, as I tried to like elaborate a little bit, we didn't, and I mean, when they were writing the grant, PIs too, I mean, they didn't, I notice, and especially like in these last few minutes, when you talk more about like this engineering, architecture, that kind of technical stuff, I came to notice that they have not thought much about these different data types, what to do with these different data types. Like there is this distinction, which is, I mean, which was clear, of course, like we have interview data, we have surveys. However, this is not a difference of data types. Maybe, I mean, I can't say, I don't know. This is a difference of data collection, I think, at some point, right? So in this case, when it comes to data analysis today, the project is kind of over. We have the data, we are still working on it, but the project is over. There is no data collection anymore. We cannot, I mean, the research part, working on the data of the project is like a few people at FSU, Florida State. The others were like writing curriculum materials to be implemented in math classrooms. They were mathematicians. But some of them are statisticians. They know this kind of stuff. But not many people are working on data and trying to analyze what happened in the last 5 years in the classrooms. And when it comes to our group, we are just 3 people. And I mean, the other two are like they're both professors. One of them retired. I think they are very well known in their fields. But this kind of data structure, data architecture, like whatever it is, we have not been introduced to this at this extent. And I can say that we are not making the progress that we could in getting reports, in getting just simple data analysis. I think we are all not very well satisfied. I am thinking of like getting the at least just the quantitative results from Qualtrics surveys, and I did it all by myself. And I can say that just the surveys were like in numbers of like in maybe hundreds, I can say, because we did like at least 3 surveys in a classroom in a semester, if not 4. And then each semester we had at least 10 classrooms, like constantly sending reminders, and like it's lots of surveys. And I'm thinking like I did everything manually, downloading from Qualtrics, merging each classroom. We kind of constantly, not even if not every semester, kind of every year, we changed order of the items in the survey, wording of the items, kind of like there were these differences that we had, and then it caused a lot of pain on my side, like spending lots of hours trying to get the data aligned. This is all because we haven't thought about data structure, data alignment. Like some of the team constructed, you mentioned that I cannot even remember earlier. Documentation maybe, documentation maybe. I mean, that we didn't think about, they didn't think about. And I can say that not many people in the fields that I'm familiar think about these things. And productivity is very low. The outcomes that are generated is, I can say, not very satisfactory.
Yeah, it sounds like there's there's a desire to collect data, there's a desire to do that analysis, but there's really not the knowledge on how best to go about it.
Yeah.
So especially around so we talked about this last week around converting qualitative responses to quantitative responses when collecting data. So so doing collection on a 1 through 5 scale instead of a good, great, neutral, bad, awful scale. So having those qualitative data points truly be quantitative at collection can just ease the analysis that you do later down the road. So it sounds like in the next study, it may be helpful to potentially kind of standardize around that and make sure semester over semester you're doing the same questions and you're making sure that there are the same number of answer options. So if you do on a scale of 1 through 5 one semester, do a scale of 1 through 5 the next semester, and make sure that kind of stays standard. And that'll ease productivity on the end of the analysis as you go and try to get the product out of that.
And I remember, I think it was in a meeting where one of the previous American Statistical Association or Society president was talking. She said, like in higher ed, like there are lots of surveys and usually they have open-ended responses. And then she said, we almost always do not analyze open-ended items because we don't know, we don't have resources, time, I mean, human, to analyze these open-ended responses. And then I think this affects the data quality too. Like, I mean, on the side of the respondents, there are these qualitative items that you need to respond, and it takes most of the time. I mean, it does, at least for me. And then you just want to get rid of the survey, like knowing there are these items that you need to write, you are expected to write a few sentences at least. And then at the end of the day, they stay unanalyzed. Like,
Yeah, it sounds like you and Kyle might be a good team for a project because that is very much in the ethos of natural language processing. And
yeah.
how do you analyze qualitative data using qualitative standardized methods?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I am very much into it. Like there are these advanced models for quantitative people, and I mean, some great work has been done. And for the qualitative data, I just really want to learn. Like there is this deep, diverse human experience in qualitative data, and it is just represented by words. And this was basically why I was like fascinated about qualitative data. Like you can see the context, you can see the words, you can get to the emotions, but when it comes to liquid items 1 to 5, they are all lost. Like you take the means, you even get to the means, or like do averages, regression, etc. Like human is at some point lost. So when we do qualitative, human is mostly there, like we try to keep human there, but it is a pain to analyze qualitative data. I used
Yeah.
to work with NVivo at some point, but again, it is like human coding. It is fine to code data, but I mean, if you have 1,000 responses, like 1,000 students, 5 responses for each student, you just cannot do it. That
Yeah,
doesn't
and
happen.
I think that's why we as a society have attempted to take the human out of it by making surveys quantitative, or by using natural language processing and having a machine read through and having like one of the, I think, more basic natural language processing analyses is sentiment analysis, where you just have a file of good words and a file of bad words, and then a program goes through and says, well, in this segment of text there are 7 good words and 4 bad words. This sentiment of this segment of text is good. And so there's like very simple binary ways of converting them to quantitative, and really, is that productive or not, I'm not sure, but it's a different way to go about it than spending thousands of man hours on it.
Yeah.
I do know we have about 5 minutes left. Are there any other topics that people wanted to touch on?
I feel like from what we just talked about, I just want to kind of bring up like manipulation to the point of your data is, or sorry, I always switch data and data. I don't know why I always do that. Your data is like no longer even close to what you got. So I think, I don't know. I feel like we'll get into that like at a certain point, but I just wanted to bring it up because like, I don't know, you can like overdo it as well, I guess, with some of it.
Yeah, it's that old adage of how to lie with statistics, where it's like you manipulate your data and it's so far away from its raw form that there's no truth behind it anymore. It's just you could have as easily pulled that data point out of thin air as it actually came from a person or a machine or whatever else you're collecting information from. No, I think that's key.
And that can also happen in the way you present graphs and visuals too, right? I mean, in terms of the spacing between the different things and whatever. On the scale, you can make something look steeper than it is or whatever.
Yes. Okay. I forgot that I wanted to do this, but let's end on this. I want to hear everyone's pet peeves in data. It can be your pet peeve in data visualization, analysis, whatever it is. So, Kyle, why don't you start us off because you reminded me of the topic.
Oh, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. I mean, I guess that might be one, what I just said. I'll try to think of another one while other people are.
Okay. Ashley, what about you?
Mine's like sourcing when people don't say like, hey, we got a lot of money from this company that doesn't want to find mercury in our water and things like that.
Yeah. I get that. Madison, I know you were having some glitchy issues. If you have a pet peeve, feel free to put it in the chat. Jihan, what about you?
This is weird. I don't know what that means.
Oh, a pet peeve is like something that is prevalent that people do a lot that really bothers you.
Oh,
So, for example, my pet peeve in data is when people don't properly document their code inline, which inline code documentation is where you write a piece of code and right above it, you write a note that says, this next piece of code is going to do XYZ. And people either don't do it or they do it really poorly. And it drives me insane because it means that I end up eventually just rewriting all of their code and it wastes a ton of time.
yeah.
So
I
that's
think
what a pet peeve is.
I see. I think mine would be very general. I mean, not that specific. It is about generalizations. Like you have data, there are outcomes you can get, and like there is this reasoning, and then you make generalizations, like arguing that it is the scientific outcome. I think this kind of generalizations just throws me off.
Yeah, that's a good one. That bothers me too. Jessica, what about you? Do you have a data pet peeve?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about it. I can't think of anything specific. I think that the biggest thing that might bother me with data is when people aren't good at maintaining the master of the master copy, should say, of their data, right? And everyone's referencing a different source. I'm typically tasked with like consolidating and figuring out what the truth is. So I think that's my biggest pet peeve is, right, when we don't take the time at the beginning, right, to hash that process out. And I mean, as you said, document it and just figure out what tool is best or what process is best, because someone has to go clean it up.
Yeah. Kyle, did you think of something? No.
No, not really. I'm still new to all this, so I'm, probably as I get more exposure, I'll have more things that show up repeatedly.
Oh yeah, you'll have plenty of stuff that you get annoyed with. I'll give you another one. I hate pie charts. I think they are the least useful thing in the world, and they drive me insane when people use them. So yeah. Well, that puts us at just a little over 8 o'clock. I want to thank everyone for coming out. I know the discussions aren't necessarily, as informative to you as the training sessions, but I really enjoy them. So thank you very much. And that's all I have for you tonight. Please keep a lookout for the Project ARC meetup group. Not group, but meetup session. I will be scheduling it for mid-January. And feel free to reach out to people on the Syracuse IO Slack channel. There's a specific thread on there for WIML DS. Figure out what you want your projects to be. I'm looking forward to a lot of really cool pitches. Everyone have a great night.
Thank you. You too. Thanks for
Thank
doing
you.
this.
Have a good one.
Bye.